The war in space had burned for many years, and Commander Daniel Hayes had lost more than he could count. His fleet was scattered across the empty stars. His ship was half broken, drifting alone in the dark, the silence of the void pressing heavy against him. Daniel sat in the captain's chair, thinking maybe this was the end. Then the alarm sounded, sharp and sudden, red lights flashing across the control room. Daniel jumped up, his heart racing. Something was approaching, something small, an escape pod, moving fast and locking onto his damaged ship. Daniel grabbed his blaster, his mind racing. Was this an enemy trick? Or just another dying soul trying to survive? The hatch opened with a hiss. Steam curling into the cold air. Daniel aimed his weapon, waiting for a soldier or a monster, but instead, he saw something that made him freeze. A child, small and trembling, with pale skin that shimmered faint blue. Her eyes wide, shining, almost human, she stumbled forward, whispering in a soft, broken voice, "Call me your daughter. I want you to be my father." Daniel's finger twitched on the trigger, his heart pounding harder. He had faced warlords, assassins, alien beasts, but never this, a little girl calling him father. She looked no older than 10, her body thin, her clothes torn, her lips trembling as if she had not eaten for days. She reached toward him, her hands shaking, her gaze locked on his as if her whole life depended on that moment. He shook his head, his voice rough. "No, I don't know what you are. I don't know why you are here. But you picked the wrong man." Still, she stepped closer, her eyes filling with tears. "No, wrong. Father," she said again, her voice breaking like glass, her legs giving way as she fell to the floor. Clutching at his boots, Daniel pulled back, unsure if this was a trap, unsure if something would explode. Yet nothing happened, only the sound of her sobbing, the sound of a child alone. Daniel knelt slowly. Keeping the blaster ready, he studied her face. The ridges on her forehead marked her as alien, a Vayari, one of the most feared enemies of humanity. Yet those eyes, those strange glowing eyes, looked at him not with hate, not with trickery, but with desperate need. He had seen soldiers beg for mercy. He had seen comrades cry for help, but never like this. Never a child calling him father. He lifted her chin carefully, her skin cold to the touch. "Why would you say that?" "Why me?" he asked, his tone softer, though doubt still filled his chest. She blinked slowly, as if gathering all her courage. "No family. No home. I saw you. And I knew. You're my father now." Daniel felt something twist inside him, something he had buried long ago. Memories of his real daughter, lost years ago in the first wave of the war. The pain returned sharp and cruel, and he almost pushed the alien child away. But her grip on his sleeve was strong, trembling, but unshakable, as if she would die before letting go. The ship groaned around them, sparks falling from broken wires. Daniel cursed under his breath. He had no time for this, yet he could not bring himself to throw her back into space. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "Fine, you can stay here for now, but don't call me that. I'm not your father." Her lips curved into the smallest smile, though tears still wet her cheeks. She whispered almost to herself, "Father." Before curling into a corner of the control room, her tiny body shaking with cold, Daniel turned away, trying to focus on repairs, yet his mind refused to let go of the words. "Call me your daughter." He wanted to believe it was a trick, a weapon sent by the Vayari. Yet when he looked at her again, curled up and fragile, his heart whispered a truth he did not want to face. She was not his enemy, not in that moment. Outside the ship, the stars burned cold and endless, the silence of war waiting to strike again. But inside the broken vessel, something strange had begun, a bond that should not exist, a bond that might change everything. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, whispering to himself, "What have I done?" And the girl, though half asleep, whispered back with the faintest breath, "Father." The void of space held its secrets, but the encounter between a human soldier and an alien child had just begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ship floated through empty space, its engines weak, its lights flickering like candles ready to die. Commander Daniel Hayes worked at the control panel, his hands steady but his mind restless, and behind him in the corner of the room, the alien child watched him with quiet eyes, her small body curled up like a shadow that refused to leave. She had not spoken much since that first moment, but whenever Daniel glanced at her, she whispered one word, always the same, always soft. Father. Daniel clenched his jaw every time he heard it. Something sharp twisted inside him. He told himself again and again, she was not his daughter. She was Vayari, enemy of humanity, destroyer of his people. Yet when he looked at her thin arms, Her trembling form, he saw not a weapon but a child in need. The hours passed, and Daniel felt her eyes following every move he made. He reached for tools. She leaned forward, mimicking the way he held them. He tapped a sequence on the console. She tilted her head, copying his rhythm with her small fingers against the wall. It was strange, almost unsettling, as if she was learning him piece by piece, building herself from his actions. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice rough from silence. "What's your name? Do you even have one?" She blinked, confused for a moment, then shook her head, her voice weak. "No, only what they called me. Experiment. Failure," the word stung. Sharp and cruel, Daniel looked away, fixing another loose wire. "Then I'll call you something else. But not daughter, never that." Her lips trembled, her eyes wet again. "Then call me anything. But let me stay." Daniel said nothing, though deep inside a storm was rising. He wanted to throw her out, yet he couldn't. She had carved herself into his ship, into his silence, into his thoughts. Later, when he rationed the last pieces of dried food, he noticed her staring, her eyes wide, her stomach growling loud in the quiet. He sighed, muttering under his breath, and handed her half. "Eat, before you collapse." She smiled for the first time, small and fragile, as if the simple act of kindness was a miracle. She held the food carefully, almost sacred, and whispered again, "Father." Daniel turned away quickly, his chest heavy, anger mixing with something softer, something dangerous. He told himself it was just survival, just instinct, nothing more, yet his heart knew he was lying. The days blurred in the endless dark, and a strange rhythm grew between them. Daniel repairing the ship, the girl following, imitating, sometimes humming softly in a language he did not understand, sometimes watching him with eyes too wise for her age. When he slept, he often woke to find her sitting near, her gaze protective, as if she were guarding him instead of the other way around. But not everyone would see her as he did. Daniel knew this truth like a blade pressing against his back when the fleet found them. Questions would rise, whispers would spread, and orders would come. And those orders would not be kind. One night, as the stars burned cold outside, Daniel asked her directly, his voice sharp, "Why me of all the humans? Why call me father?" She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, her voice soft but steady. "Because when I saw you, I did not feel fear. I did not feel pain. I felt safe, like something inside me had been waiting only for you. I don't know why, I just know it is true." Daniel stared at her, unable to answer. Her words cut deeper than any blade. They reminded him of his real daughter, her laughter, her smile. Memories buried under years of war, the grief rose again. And for the first time in many years, Daniel closed his eyes to hide the tears that threatened to fall. The bond was forming, slow but unbreakable. And Daniel feared it more than any enemy fleet, because it was not made of orders, not made of duty, but of something he had sworn never to feel again. Love for a child, even if that child came from the enemy. Outside, the stars whispered their silent watch, and inside the broken ship, an impossible bond grew stronger, one that would challenge war itself, one that neither human nor alien command would ever allow. Daniel leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "This is wrong, and yet I can't let her go." And in the corner, the girl smiled faintly, her voice a soft echo in the quiet. "Father." The broken ship finally limped back to human space. The fleet gathered like steel wolves around Daniel's vessel. Docking clamps hissed, soldiers in gray armor stormed aboard, their eyes scanning every corner. Daniel stood tall, but inside his chest a storm was brewing. The alien child hid behind him, clutching his coat, her glowing eyes wide with fear. The soldiers whispered among themselves, their voices sharp and quick. "That's one of them, a Vayari." "Why is Hayes protecting it?" Daniel barked. "She's no threat. She's just a child." But the whispers spread like fire through dry grass. The word Vayari carried poison. It carried the memory of cities burned, families lost, comrades slaughtered. No soldier wanted an alien on board, not even a small one, not even one who clung to a human commander like a daughter. High Command summoned Daniel, a cold room of steel and light. Admirals staring at him across a long table, their voices clipped and sharp. "Explain why you brought a Vayari specimen onto human territory." Daniel's voice was steady. "She is no specimen. She is just a child." The admirals exchanged looks. One leaned forward. "Rumors suggest the Vayari created hybrid projects, blending their blood with human essence, designed to infiltrate, designed to deceive. What if this creature is one of them?" Daniel's jaw tightened, his hands clenched. I don't care what she was made for. I know what she is now. She is not a weapon. But the whispers grew louder beyond the walls. Soldiers in the mess hall muttered. Technicians in the hangars stared when Daniel passed. Some spat when they saw the child, calling her monster, calling her spy. Daniel told himself he didn't care. But every whisper cut deeper. Every stare reminded him that he was standing alone against his own people that night. Inside the small quarters he was given, Daniel sat across from the child. She hugged her knees, her eyes filled with sorrow. They hate me, she whispered, her voice shaking. They think I am enemy. Daniel wanted to lie, wanted to tell her it would be fine. But the truth sat heavy on his tongue. He sighed. They fear you. Fear can turn men into beasts. But you must stay strong. She looked at him, her small hands trembling. Father, am I a weapon? The question pierced him deeper than any blade. He shook his head fiercely. No, you're not. Don't ever believe that. Yet doubt gnawed at him. In the dark silence of his own thoughts, he wondered, was High Command right? Was she created for this very purpose? To slip past human walls, to cling to his heart, to make him betray his own kind without even knowing the next day? Whispers turned into challenges. A soldier confronted him in the corridor, his eyes blazing. Why are you protecting that thing? Hayes, how many humans has her kind killed? How many of our children, and now you let it call you father? Daniel's fist clenched, but he did not strike, his voice cold as steel. Because she is not like them, because she deserves a chance. The soldier spat at the floor and stormed away, but others had heard, and the whispers spread again, louder this time, more dangerous. And Daniel knew soon it would not just be words, it would be orders. That night, the child could not sleep. She sat awake, her glowing eyes fixed on him. They will take me away, she said, her voice hollow. They will break me apart. Daniel sat beside her, his chest tight, his voice low. I won't let them. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She clung to him, trembling. Why do you protect me? I am not even human. Daniel looked into her eyes, seeing not alien glow but raw pain. And his heart answered before his mind could stop it. Because you're mine now, whether they believe it or not. For the first time since the war began, Daniel felt the weight of his uniform heavy on his shoulders. Heavier than the enemy's fire, heavier than the void of space. He was not just fighting the Vayari anymore, he was fighting whispers, fighting fear, fighting the very command he had sworn to serve outside. The fleet prepared for another battle, engines burning, weapons armed, but inside Daniel's heart another battle raged. The question of loyalty, the question of love, the question of whether the child by his side was salvation, or the greatest danger humanity had ever seen. And as the ship moved toward the front lines, the whispers followed like shadows, pressing closer, sharper, hungrier, until Daniel could almost hear them in his sleep. Words that would not leave him alone: spy, weapon, traitor. But over all those voices, one word rose stronger, soft yet unshakable, from the lips of the child curled against him. Father. The fleet moved into enemy space. Ships spread across the stars like arrows ready to fly. Daniel stood on the bridge, the alien child close behind him, her small hand gripping his sleeve. Soldiers glanced at her with cold eyes, some whispering, some glaring, none offering kindness. She was a shadow they did not want, yet she clung to him as if he were the last safe place in the universe. High Command had sent strict orders. If the Vayari appeared, strike first, no hesitation. Daniel nodded with the rest, but his heart carried another weight, the child beside him, the one who still whispered father when the night was too quiet, the one who reminded him of all he had lost, and all he might still protect. The alarm sounded. Sharp and cruel, the enemy was near. Ships uncloaked from the void, Vayari cruisers glowing like blades of fire. The battle began with a storm of light, weapons firing, shields trembling, explosions tearing the black sky apart. The bridge shook with every hit. Voices shouted orders, soldiers scrambled, fear and fire filling the air through the chaos. Daniel worked with calm precision, guiding his crew, striking back against the enemy. But then something strange happened. A small shuttle broke from the Vayari lines, diving straight toward their ship, faster than defense systems could stop. The crew panicked, weapons locked too late. The shuttle smashed into their outer hull, tearing through steel, alarms screaming. Oxygen spilling into the void. Soldiers rushed to seal the breach. But something else happened, something no one expected. The child moved before anyone could stop her. Her body glowed faint blue, her eyes burning with strange light. She raised her small hands and a shield of energy formed, covering the crack in the hull. holding the air inside, saving them all from being sucked into space. The crew froze. Staring in shock, whispers turned into gasps. "What is she? What power is that?" Daniel rushed to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Stop! You'll kill yourself," but she shook her head. Her face pale, sweat dripping down her skin. "No, I protect Father." Her body trembled as the glow grew brighter, the shield holding against the deadly pull of space. Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to drag her away. Yet without her, they would all be dead already. Finally, the breach was sealed with steel plates, and she collapsed into his arms, her breathing shallow, her eyes dimming. Daniel carried her from the bridge, his voice fierce. "She saved us. All of you saw it. She is no weapon against us. She is life." But the whispers returned, sharper, louder, soldiers muttering. "Or maybe she is designed to save us, so we trust her. Maybe this is how infiltration begins." Daniel turned, his voice like fire. "If not for her, you'd be floating in space right now. Remember that before you call her a monster." Silence followed, but Daniel knew it would not last. Fear does not vanish in one moment, it hides and grows, waiting for another chance to strike later. In the quiet of the med bay, Daniel sat beside her bed, the child's chest rising weakly, her hand curled around his finger even in sleep. She whispered faintly, half dreaming, "Don't leave me, Father." His throat tightened, the walls of duty and loyalty shaking inside him. He had sworn to obey command, to fight for humanity, but now he had sworn something else, unspoken yet powerful, to protect her no matter what, even if it meant standing alone. The next morning, the call came. High Command demanded the child be turned over for examination, their voices cold, their tone final. "She is not safe on the front lines. Bring her to us, or we will come and take her." Daniel's blood turned to fire. He knew what examination meant, not care, not safety, but experiments, cages, knives, and questions. He looked at the girl sleeping peacefully, her trust in him unshakable, and he whispered to himself, "They will not touch you. Not while I breathe." The trials of loyalty had begun, not loyalty to fleet or command, but to something deeper, something stronger. Loyalty to a child who had chosen him. Loyalty to the word she whispered again and again, the word that had broken down his walls, the word that made him fight against his own kind if he must. Farther outside, the war raged on, ships burned, stars shook with fire, but inside Daniel Hayes, another war had started, one that would test his soul, his honor, and his heart in ways no battlefield ever could. The medbay was quiet. Only the soft hum of machines filled the air. Daniel sat beside the child, her small body still weak after saving the ship, her hand wrapped around his finger like it was the last rope holding her to life. He watched her chest rise and fall, every breath fragile, every moment heavy, and for the first time since the war began, Daniel Hayes prayed she would wake when her eyes finally opened. Glowing faint but alive, she whispered the same word that haunted his every step. Father Daniel smiled weakly, though pain pressed deep in his chest. "You should be resting. You nearly burned yourself out." She shook her head, her voice soft. "I saved you." That is enough, but Daniel could not rest because outside those doors, shadows gathered, whispers louder than ever, soldiers doubting, officers demanding, High Command watching. He had broken rules. He had hidden the truth, and he knew it could not last. Soon they would come for her, and he would have to decide where his true loyalty lay. The call came sooner than expected. A squad of armored soldiers marched into the medbay, their leader's voice cold as steel. "Commander Hayes, step aside by order of High Command. The alien is to be taken into custody." Daniel rose to his feet, his voice sharp. "She is no threat. She is a child. She saved this ship. You owe her your lives." But the soldiers did not waver, their rifles gleaming, their stance firm. "Orders are orders, sir. Step aside." Behind him, the girl sat up, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. She clung to his arm, her voice breaking. "Father, don't let them, please." Daniel's heart cracked. He stood like a wall before her, his hand hovering near his blaster. For a moment, the air burned with silence. Every soldier waiting, every breath a trigger. The whole ship holding still to see if a commander would draw against his own men. But Daniel knew the truth. He could not win against them, not here, not now. His teeth clenched, his voice low. "You will regret this." The soldiers pulled the child from his side, her scream echoing down the corridor, her small hands reaching for him, her voice tearing through his heart. "Father!" Daniel moved forward, but the rifles raised, blocking him, pushing him back. He watched helplessly as they dragged her away, her cries fading into the steel halls, until only silence remained. Silence heavier than war. Silence colder than the void. For hours, Daniel stood alone in his quarters, his fists bloody from striking the walls, his mind torn between duty and love, between oath and heart. Every whisper of the soldiers echoed in his ears: traitor. Fool, she is enemy, she is weapon. But then another whisper rose stronger. The voice of the child, trembling, desperate: Father, don't let the memories return uninvited. The face of his real daughter, her laughter, her smile, her death in the flames of the first fiery strike. Daniel had sworn never to feel that pain again, never to open his heart, but fate had given him no choice. Another child had slipped through his walls. Another voice had called him father, and he could not walk away. Not again. News spread through the fleet. Some cheered that the alien was finally under control. Others whispered doubt. Some asked why a child would sacrifice herself to save humans. Daniel listened but said nothing. His silence was a mask. Behind it a storm gathered, cold and sharp. He would not let her rot in cages. He would not let command carve her apart in the name of safety. No matter the cost, that night, alone in the dark, Daniel stared at the stars through the viewing glass. His reflection broken in the black, his voice low but firm. If they think they can take my daughter from me, they are wrong. He had not said the word before. Not fully, not aloud, but now it came with fire, with certainty, with a vow: daughter. The breaking point had come. Daniel Hayes was no longer just a commander of men. He was a father again, and he would burn fleets, defy orders, even stand against humanity itself, to keep that truth alive and far away, in a cold cell of steel and light. The girl sat alone, her knees pulled to her chest, her glowing eyes dim but her voice unbroken, whispering into the dark: He will come, Father will come. The corridors of the fleet base were silent at night. Only the hum of engines and the echo of boots on steel floors filled the emptiness. Daniel Hayes moved like a shadow, his uniform replaced by dark gear, his face hard with purpose. Every step carried the weight of betrayal. For tonight he was not a commander of the fleet. Tonight he was a father stealing back what was his. The girl had been locked deep inside the research division, a place where secrets lived, a place where screams were silenced. Daniel had heard the whispers, the words experiments and vivisection. He could not wait. He could not trust command if he hesitated. She would be lost to him forever. Slipping past guards, using codes he was never meant to know. Daniel moved through the halls, his heart pounding, his mind sharp. He thought of her small hands clinging to him, her soft voice whispering father, and that gave him strength to keep moving. He reached the cell. Cold steel walls, bright lights, glass thicker than armor, and inside she sat, curled against the corner, her eyes dim but still glowing faint, her body shaking from hunger, from fear. When she saw him, her face lit like a star breaking through the night. Her lips formed the word without sound. Father Daniel pressed his hand to the glass, his chest tight. I'm here. I'm taking you home. But alarms began to sound. Heavy doors locking behind him. Footsteps thundering closer. Voices shouting, Intruder in Sector 4, secure the alien. Daniel cursed under his breath, drawing his blaster. He fired at the locks. Sparks flying, the glass cracked but did not shatter. Time running short. Soldiers flooding the corridor. Daniel stood his ground, covering her cell, his weapon blazing. Men falling, shouts echoing, yet his eyes never left hers. Hold on. I'll get you out. Finally, the glass shattered. The door hissed open, and she rushed into his arms, trembling, clinging, her voice shaking but fierce. I knew you would come. He held her close, his heart breaking and healing at once. Always, together they ran through the corridors. Alarms screaming louder, red lights flashing, soldiers chasing. Daniel guided her through hidden paths. Old service tunnels he remembered from years ago. Yet even as they fled, questions burned inside him. Why was she so different? Why did she cling to him like destiny? Why did the fleet fear her so much? The answers came in a room Daniel had not meant to enter. A hidden archive chamber, doors half open, screens glowing with files, words scrolling across them. Project Orphan Hybrid Series. Subject 17. Daniel's breath caught. He forced himself to read, and the truth froze his blood. The girl was not just Vayari, not just alien, she was something else. Her body created from spliced genes, her mind built to adapt, her existence an accident. She was one of many experiments thrown away by the enemy, but unlike the others, she had survived. She had endured. She had escaped, and somehow, in ways science could not explain, she had chosen him. Not as part of design, not as program, but as instinct. As truth, Daniel's hand shook as he read the last line. Subject 17 exhibits unexplainable human attachment. Possible imprinting toward selected target. Recommend termination to prevent contamination. He looked down at her glowing eyes full of trust, and he felt rage burn hotter than any star. They call you failure, they call you weapon, but to me, you are my daughter. She hugged him tighter, her small voice fierce. Yes, Father? Guards closed in, the chamber doors rattling. Daniel grabbed the files, burning them into his mind, then led her through the last escape tunnel, their breath sharp, their hearts racing, finally reaching the hangar, where small crafts waited like sleeping birds. Soldiers stormed behind them. Weapons raised, Daniel fired back, guiding her toward a ship. But then something strange happened. Her body glowed again, brighter than before, her eyes blazing with power. Energy waves rippled from her small hands, pushing soldiers back, shields of light forming around them both. She gasped, trembling. I can feel it, I can protect you. Daniel lifted her into the ship, his voice low but certain. Not protect me. We protect each other. The engines roared to life. The hangar doors opened and the ship shot into the black sea of stars, alarms fading behind them, command voices crying treason, betrayal, but none of it mattered. Daniel had made his choice, he had chosen her, and nothing would take her away again. As the stars stretched before them, Daniel held her close in the cockpit, her head resting on his chest, her small voice whispering, "We are free now." Father Daniel looked out at the endless galaxy, danger waiting in every corner, fleets hunting them both. Yet for the first time in years, he smiled. Yes, daughter, we are free. But deep inside, he knew freedom would not last. The revelation burned inside him. Both humans and Vayari would hunt them, not for what she was, but for what she could become. And the war was only beginning. The stolen craft drifted at the edge of a battlefield, stars lit by fire and smoke, human ships clashing with Vayari cruisers, fleets locked in a storm of death. Daniel Hayes gripped the controls, his jaw tight. The alien child sat beside him, her glowing eyes watching the chaos, her small hands trembling yet her voice steady. They will come for us, both sides, they will never stop. Daniel nodded, his heart heavy. Then we show them the truth, once and for all. The ship shuddered as blasts tore across the void. Alarms screamed. Daniel weaved through burning wrecks, dodging enemy fire, but both fleets noticed. Human voices shouted through comms. Hayes, stand down! Surrender the asset, Vayari commanders hissed. Return Subject 17. She belongs to us. The galaxy itself seemed to pull at them, demanding the child be claimed, not loved. The girl pressed against him, her voice soft but fierce. Father, they will kill us. Daniel looked into her eyes, and in that moment all doubt burned away. He had denied her word again and again, fought against the bond, but the truth was carved into his heart, stronger than any order, stronger than any war. He placed his hand on hers, his voice steady. No, daughter, they will not. The girl's breath caught, her eyes wide. For the first time she heard him speak the word she had longed for, the word he had feared, daughter, before the fleets. Before enemies and allies alike, Daniel opened the comms, his voice carrying across the stars. Listen to me, she is not a weapon. She is not a spy. She is my daughter, and I will protect her with my life. Silence followed for a heartbeat. Then chaos erupted. Human commanders shouting betrayal, Vayari leaders spitting rage, weapons locked on his small craft. Daniel stood tall in his seat, his voice afire no cannon could silence. You call her experiment. You call her failure, but I call her hope. And no one, no fleet, no command will take her from me. The girl's power awoke fully, her body glowing brighter than suns. Waves of energy spilling from her hands, shields expanding around the small craft. Enemy fire struck but could not break it. Ships trembled as the force spread, human and Vayari alike stunned into stillness. Light pouring across the battlefield like dawn after endless night. Inside the shield, Daniel held her close, his voice breaking but proud. You are not alone, you are not enemy, you are my child. And today the galaxy will know it. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She whispered through sobs, I waited so long for you to say it. Father. Daniel kissed her forehead, whispering, Yes, daughter. Yes, the fleets hesitated, caught in the storm of light. Weapons frozen, soldiers staring in awe, some lowering their guns, for in that moment they saw not a monster, not an enemy, but a child glowing with love. Her power not meant to destroy, but to protect, to heal, to bridge the divide between two worlds that had only known hate. The battle faltered, ships drifting in uneasy silence. And Daniel knew the war would not end today. But a seed had been planted. A seed of doubt, of change, of possibility, born not from politics or victory, but from the bond between a human and the daughter he chose. Against all odds, engines roared as Daniel guided the craft away, his heart lighter, his oath sealed, his path dangerous but true. The galaxy might hunt them, fleets might chase them, but nothing could undo the words he had spoken, the truth he had claimed in the quiet after the storm. The girl rested against him, her small voice soft. "You said it. You called me daughter," Daniel smiled, his eyes wet with tears he did not hide. "And I will say it every day, until my last breath." The stars stretched before them, endless, dangerous, but full of hope. Father and daughter together, bound not by blood, not by design, but by choice, by love, by humanity's greatest strength, mercy. And as the stolen craft vanished into the black, the fleets behind them still frozen in silence, the galaxy carried the echo of Daniel Hayes's words, a whisper that might one day grow into peace. "She is my daughter."